Phillips, your host for the podcast, Estate Planning Made Easy, that teaches you how to keep your wealth in the family. It's good to have you here today, be a part of the podcast. And I wanted to get back in line. Last week we talked about this new return of premium long-term care plan that just was introduced in the market. Very exciting. It's 10% lower than the next best competitor. But this week I wanted to get back on schedule here to talk about estate planning mistakes, ones that I see most often. And no need to actually be in order, but one of the greatest and gravest mistakes that I see constantly is how people are handling their retirement accounts. In fact, I'll read it to you here. It says in my book, The 10 Most Common Estate Planning Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. And by the way, this will all be on your show notes, how to access these reports. But here's the mistake. Failure to properly plan the distribution of your pension/retirement accounts. So this is money that you have set aside for your future. Either you've done it through a 401k, your employer may have matched it. Now you're retiring and you move it into your personal IRA, and then you invest that and it keeps going and growing and hopefully doing very well for you. And that is your nest egg. That is what you have set aside for your future. We talked about this a couple of podcasts before. One of the biggest enemies to our qualified, they call them qualified accounts. So let's just call the whole gambit qualified accounts. IRAs, 401ks, anything is qualified money. The biggest enemy to qualified accounts, or the biggest enemy, are number one, longevity. You live too long, there may be not enough there for you to have in your later years. The other one is called longevity risk. The other one is poor investment choices. And we kind of talked about that when Todd Phillips, my son, was on as a guest. We talked about annuities and how to kind of mitigate that risk by getting investments in those accounts that are safe and secure and there's no risk element to them. But today I want to talk to you about the third and probably the biggest risk to all of this, and that is taxes. Now, as you all know, and I've actually been surprised occasionally when I've been talking with people, they honestly don't really comprehend the concept of what happens with this money if you touch it. It accumulates tax deferred, but qualified accounts like an IRA is simply an IOU to the IRS. I'm going to tell you a quick story. Went to a meeting at ASU with a friend of mine, and at the meeting there was a former Treasury Department official, and he was explaining to the audience what was going on with just the whole economy. This was years ago. And somebody raised their hand and said, well, what are you going to do? What's the plan to take care of the deficit? Now, we know that the deficit is the biggest it's ever been in the history of our country. So it's a big concern, especially to young adults that were in the audience. These were students at ASU. And they were concerned about this deficit. And to everyone's surprise, he said, well, the federal government really isn't that concerned about the deficit. And the reason why we're not concerned is because we have, and at the time it was about 18 trillion, but now it's 38 trillion, so kind of to offset, $38 trillion in off-sheet assets. In other words, they're not actually in the revenue, but they're off-sheet or off-balance sheet assets. And one of the kids said, well, what in the world is an off-sheet asset? And he said, well, it's all the money that's in retirement accounts. We know that someday, as people build this money, and they do a good job of building it and growing it, someday it's going to be ours. At least 40% of it's going to be ours, because as they take it out, we tax it. And so if you take out $1 out of your IRA to buy a candy bar, you got to pay 40 cents on it. And depending on what state you're in, you may have to even pay more. So you really only get 60 cents out of every dollar. Well, that's your concern. That's your problem. There's another problem that goes along with this, though, and this is part of the estate planning, is if you leave that asset to one of your children. So if, for example, you don't make it all the way through and you don't have a quarter left at the end of all of this, you didn't live to life expectancy, or you lived to life expectancy, but the money you did so well in your investment that there's a lot left in it, in the account. Well, your children will inherit it. And in 2020, there was a law that was passed called the Secure Act. And I have written a special report called the Bombshell Battle Plan, How to Defend Against the IRS Secret Weapon. And I wrote this report specifically to give you guidelines on what this is all about, what the rules are. And then I also shared with you some viable solutions that you can use to combat this tax that's going to happen to not only you, but to your children. And so there are ways in which you can actually combat the tax. But remember, this is qualified money. You take it out, you pay taxes on it. If you leave it to your kids and they take it out, they pay taxes on it. Well, with the Secure Act, it said this specifically. In the past, you had what's called a Stretch IRA, which means that if I left my $1 million IRA to my son Todd, he would be able to take it out over his lifetime. That was a Stretch IRA. That was awesome. 2020, all that changed. And January 1st of 2020, it became a law that Todd has to take it out all in 10 years. He only has 10 years. Now, we're about halfway through that initial group that have passed away in 2020. It'll be interesting to see, the tax Armageddon that's going to happen at that particular point in time, when these people that have left the money in and let it accumulate, because they don't have to pay taxes. There's no RMD required, no required minimum distribution required for them to take it out, but they have to have it all out in the 10th year. Well, that's not really happening. We've seen studies. People are accessing the money right away, but when they do, when your beneficiaries do access it, they have to pay income taxes. And the income taxes, by the way, are based on their tax bracket. So if you're making $300,000 a year, and now they take out $300,000 from your IRA for a down payment on a house or whatever, well, that $300,000 will be taxed at their income tax bracket, which obviously would be the highest tax bracket in the United States today, whatever it is at the time that they take it out. So now we know, though, that in this Secure Act, one thing happened that was, and then there was also a Secure Act 2.0 was another little version of it. One thing happened in that, and that is they increased the age at which we have to take the money out of our IRA. And it's called the required minimum distribution. And that factor became a factor now at age 73, and the factor is 26.5. So, by the way, on our website, we have a calculator that you can go. So go to epmez.com and look at our calculator on the RMD, or just give us a call and we'll tell you what your RMD is based on your age. But if you had $1 million IRA, I just got my calculator here. If you have $1 million IRA and you reach the age of 73, you're going to have to take out, if you take 26.5, that's your factor, you have to take out $37,735 a year. That, of course, is fully income taxable to you. So it's added to your Social Security and other taxes, other income that you would have. So that's important to understand and to know that that is a factor. Well, now how do I combat it? What's the best way to combat this tax, especially for my kids? Well, the best way to mitigate this is to start spending this IRA. You need to get that money out of your estate. That money is not good money to pass to the kids. You have other assets. You have real estate that you could pass with a step-up basis. You have other things you can pass to them that is much better than this fully taxable IRA. So spend your money. Quit flying the peanut flights and start flying first class everywhere you go. And start enjoying your life and enjoying going on trips. Jane and I are trying to do a trip somewhere outside of Arizona usually, but somewhere once a month. And so I'm working, but I'm also playing. And so you want to start spending this money. This is the money that is your money that you set aside for your retirement. So start using it for that. Stop penny pinching if you have this IRA, because it's not a good asset to leave to the kids. The other thing that you can do is you can focus and give it to a charity. A charity, when you give it to a charity, it's 100% tax-free if you even name them as your beneficiary. The problem with that, of course, is that if you intend to leave that IRA to your children and it goes to the charity, sure, there's no taxes, but you disinherit the kids. So as I explained in the first half of the Bombshell is all the rules. The second half is all the solutions. And one of the solutions is to acquire a life insurance policy, specifically a joint and survivor life insurance policy if you're married, and use that to offset the tax liability and actually use some of your RMD. We call it the RMD leverage strategy, and that's all explained in the Bombshell Battle Plan special report. I actually even have a video on our website that I did on this very issue that you will be able to watch and understand how life insurance can play a factor in that estate planning. I wanted to share with you just a real quick story in conclusion today. I had a client come to me, and the client is maybe a little stubborn, but he's past age 73, so he's in required distribution age. He's being required to take money out. His wife is as well, so they're in their mid-70s. And he came to me and he said, I have an IRA that I've accumulated, and my purpose for the IRA is to never run out of money. And I looked at his life expectancy based on his health, and I said, well, you probably have about 10 years. And, we did the calculation together. And so with that 10 years, you need to start spending this money and get aggressive on spending it. Well, the IRA was at $8 million. Now, how do you get $8 million in an IRA? Well, it's all rollover. So he had it in a pension plan. He was a doctor, and he rolled it into his personal IRA, and it's $8 million. Now, let's just for kind of fun, let's just figure out what the RMD factor is on an $8 million IRA for someone that is 70. I'm going to just go to our report here and find it. And the RMD factor, let's just say he's 78 years old. The RMD factor is 22. So $8 million, I'll just calculate this together here. Just take $8 million and divide it by 22. He has to take out $363,000 a year. He is never going to run out of money. I asked him, I said, how much are you spending a year? And he said, well, I'm spending less than that. So he's spending less than $300,000. His IRA is not, and he's earning about 5% in his 5 to 6% in his IRA. He's never going to run out of money. They have 3 kids. Those 3 kids are going to inherit probably $2 million each. Life expectancy, $2 million each. That money is going to come into their lap, and in 10 years they have to pay all the income taxes on the $2 million, and they also have to pay whatever interest that they earned during that period of time. So let's just calculate that. $2 million falls in the lap of an attorney who's making $300,000. Okay, $2 million divided by 10, because we have 10 years, that's $200,000 that he has to get out of the IRA every year. If he waits, it's just going to exacerbate the problem. So what's the solution? The solution is have this couple, by the way, they're healthy, secure a joint and survivor life insurance policy for $6 million. That $6 million would pay, or even $3 million, that would pay the taxes that the kids are going to have to pay when they inherit the IRA. And they're going to inherit the IRA. Now, the other option would be to give it to the charity. Well, that's fine. But then you disinherit the kids and the grandkids and the great-grandkids and the great-great-grandkids. I mean, this way here, if you get the insurance, you can have the insurance pay the taxes when the kids inherit the IRA. And that's really the idea. So this is all explained in the report, The Bombshell Battle Plan. I encourage you to go to our website, shop.epmez.com. That's shop.epmez. Estate planning made easy, just kind of make your life. But it's shop.epmez.com. Order the special report, and there's a discount code that is EPMEZ. So that's your discount. So go shop.epmez.com and then use the discount code EPMEZ, and you'll get this report for half the cost that's listed in the website. Listen, IRAs are a big thing. We're going to be talking about it again next week in our podcast. We're going to be talking about some really cool ideas. But the main thing that I wanted to get across today is this is an inevitable tax. This is a tax that will be taxed to you or to your children or even your grandchildren, actually, when they inherit your IRA if you haven't spent it all. So first objective on your IRA is to what? Is to spend it. Second is to make sure that the distributions are correct, that you have the correct beneficiaries for it, the contingent beneficiaries. And third, make sure that you mitigate the income tax and estate tax that will be due on that asset should your children inherit it by acquiring a life insurance policy at a discount called discounted dollars. You take a penny and create a dollar. So, or pennies and create a dollar. That's called discounted dollars, and use that to secure the cash for the kids to pay the taxes that they're going to have to pay when they inherit your IRA. Listen, this is a big issue. We'll talk more about it. This is David Phillips, your host for Estate Planning Made Easy, signing off until next week when we talk more about IRAs and the implications that they have with regard to your estate. Thanks, and make it a great day.